I distinctly remember discovering Nick talking to a stranger online, and I dragged him off the computer and said to him, "We don't talk to strangers." And he said, "Okay, please don't stop me." I think he was in middle school. He was like, "Don't stop me. Like, be calm. I need you to understand this is a Korean pro." And I said, "A Korean pro what?" And he's like, "He's a pro player. He's in Korea." And I'm like, "You're talking to strangers in Korea?"
Hey, SE Historian here, and today I have a piece that was sort of surreal for me to make. Like many others, my love for StarCraft was inspired in a big way by people like Day9 and Tasteless. Tasteless was the voice that brought Korean StarCraft to us foreigners. Videos like Day9's Daily 100 taught me to be proud of my love for this game, and without the two of them, I likely wouldn't be making this content at all. Interviewing their mom and getting to hear her side of the story was awesome. Besides that, though, Cara is also the business operations director for Frost Giant Studios and just an incredible person overall. If you've been enjoying my work, please get subscribed so you don't miss out on my future releases. Now it's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy my word with Cara LaForge. So, Cara, thanks so much for taking the time today. I'm glad we finally got the opportunity to sit down and do this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I will tell you, I am on no interviews anywhere. I hate being interviewed, so I hope you'll be patient with me during this. I'm more of a backroom strategy kind of person. So,
Yeah, that is sort of the impression I got from some of your previous work, but we'll get to that. So, I think one of the most fascinating things about you, and one of the honestly big reasons I really was excited about talking to you is I think you have a very unique, like lived experience, in the sense that you were familiarized with like hardcore gaming and esports like decades before a lot of other people, especially people within your like age demographic. So is that like an idea that you've really considered much?
it's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I um, got exposed to computer games in college. I'm very old. I'm 67 years old. So this was a long time ago in the 70s. And I played Colossal Cave on the mainframe Dexstar computer at my college. The admin, I knew nothing about computers, but I found this computer lab was empty most of the time and it was open 24 hours a day. And I had a bad habit of pulling all-nighters to write papers. And the admin, and I got to be the sysadmin, and I got to be friends. He would let me in, and he encouraged me to play this game, to take coffee breaks in the middle of the night and play this game. And I became addicted. So text game, right? Early game. And from there, I got introduced to arcades, the old kind of arcades with a quarter, where you made it, your quarter last, your laundry money last as long as you could. So that was really where I got my first taste of games. And then I had two little kids, two sons, um, who I introduced to arcade games at a pretty young age. We take a folding chair and open it up in the arcade so they could stand on it and play. Um, and then I got busy with life. I think this happens to a lot of people in the community. I got busy with life. I was running businesses. I was raising a family. I really didn't have time. But my sons reached an age where they discovered PC games, and that kind of reintroduced games to my life. Um, at the time, I was running a localization company, and this is early days of localization. This is the late 1980s when localization is a brand new idea. Software is a brand new idea. And because I belonged to the Software Publishers Association, we would get mailed a lot of game boxes because there were award shows and you had to vote. You could vote for the game of the year. So we always had these games coming to the house. Lemmings, early games like that, and the kids used to play these things, and they got deeply into games. Um, and really, that was the start of the whole family history around gaming, was the kids' passion eventually for what were Blizzard games, for War 3, for Diablo, War 2 rather, and Brood War, and then it just grew and grew from there.
That's a fascinating experience. Yeah, like I said, I do think it's pretty unique. Of course, there's going to be some other technical people that may have been exposed maybe at a similar time frame, but pretty few overall, I think.
I recognized as an entrepreneur that tech was where it was at. Software was huge. And when the kids started to be interested in games, I thought, well, this is not a terrible thing. I mean, tech is going to be a big deal. They're learning how to take apart computers and put them back together. They're understanding how software works. I think I'm going to allow this. There was a ton I didn't understand in the early days. The kids, I'm fortunate that I have very articulate kids who are very patient with me. So they spent a lot of time explaining to me what they were doing and why they were doing it. So that was very helpful. I mean, they're real self-starters, the kids. They kind of figured out the whole StarCraft world, what was going on, why it was interesting, who was who in the space, and kind of brought me along for the journey. And so at the time, I ran first a localization business, and that did pretty well. And then the same investor, we decided we would move into a different business, which was like an international litigation business. The guy who funded me had a series of international consulting businesses. So international stuff was the thread between these businesses that I would start. And so he had realized he had a very large translation company in New York City, and he realized that there was money to be made in international litigation, but that we would need some front end consulting business that was pretty high level in order to capture all this legal translation. So I actually then started up a small law firm where we specialized in securities fraud litigation. What we did is we were the people who hunted down defendants on the run, hunted down reluctant witnesses, and dragged them into foreign courts to testify. It was a super technical legal area, and we got really, really good at it. We ran an enormous detective network all over the world where we'd hunt for people. And I used to tell the kids it was my real-time strategy game. I just loved that business. It was super interesting to hunt people down.
Yeah.
People would actively try to evade us. So we would be hunting them all over the place. And there was a huge sort of paper chase surrounding that work where we were trying to lock up, legally court subpoenas in different countries so that if they ran across the border, we'd be waiting for them with court officials and subpoenas in the new country. So I loved the strategy behind it. I thought it was very interesting. I was working with very interesting attorneys all over the world.
That's fascinating.
But it was very stressful, and the kids helped a lot. Every once in a while, the kids would come in and help in the business. And so I did that for 20 years. We worked on all kinds of things. We served process on Putin. We worked on the Enron litigation. We were trying to figure out what happened to the money in the Madoff litigations. Meanwhile, the kids have gotten into this game, StarCraft. I distinctly remember discovering Nick talking to a stranger online, and I dragged him off the computer and said to him, "We don't talk to strangers." And he said, "Okay, please don't stop me." I think he was in middle school. He was like, "Don't stop me. Like, be calm. I need you to understand this is a Korean pro." And I said, "A Korean pro what?" And he's like, "He's a pro player. He's in Korea." And I'm like, "You're talking to strangers in Korea?" I have no context, right? The kids had figured out how to get on the Korean server because they'd gotten great at Brood War, and they were trying to improve their skills. And so they were actually networking behind the scenes, getting to know people in the Korean scene. And here is their mom coming in going, we don't talk to strangers. Okay.
So
So,
in relation to like your sons, I think there's a lot of really interesting elements of your dynamic with them, and as a fan of both of them over the years, they spoke a lot about interactions with you, and there's a couple that really stood out to me. So the first one is, so in Sean's Day 9 Daily 100, which of course is the most popular video, he talks about a scenario in which he had qualified for a Brood War tournament, but he would have to miss some school for it, and his principal was disallowing it, and he said that you really really like went to bat for him and fought for his right to sort of pursue that. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember it vividly. I was big on homework. I was a former high school and college teacher, so I wanted everybody to be educated. So the house was very structured academically. But the kids sat me down at one point and said, look, this is our sport. This is our thing. You think it's very cool that we're so active in the chess club? Like, you should think it's cool that we're active in this. We don't understand why it's okay for us to miss a week to go to Wisconsin with the ultimate frisbee team, but it's not okay for us to participate in the national finals for a game if we're good at it. Like, there's nothing inherently so amazing about ultimate frisbee, that we shouldn't be allowed to do this. Their high school was very sports oriented. We were in Kansas City. It's a big sports town. So that their interest in gaming at the time, it was kind of a little different. It was a little fringy. But I was very interested in what they were doing. I asked them a lot of questions. They taught me a lot about StarCraft. They used to make me memorize which player played which race. I used to sometimes pull up a little lawn chair in between their computers and watch them play and think how beautiful the game was, even though I didn't really understand what was going on. But they literally formally sat me down at one point and showed me a New York Times article about XDS Gurr, who had just won $25,000 in New York at some big tournament. And they said to me, look, we could pay our way through college with our prize pool earnings. We are that good. And I thought it was hilarious that they were showing me a New York Times article. I'm a big New York Times reader, so I mean, this was super smart of them. They knew me, and they said, "Look, we want you to take us out to Los Angeles to a tournament to compete." And I was a single mom. I was like, "I don't have money and time to take you out to Los Angeles. I'm trying to run this litigation business." And they said, "No, seriously, we will pay you back. We will mow the lawn from here until we're 30. We really want to do this. We want you to consider it." And I thought, okay, this is pretty great. This is a smart pitch. I'm going to allow this. And the kids had even organized all their friends into local competitions. We had basically a permanent LAN going on in the attic all the time. Nick had kind of gone out to malls and said to store owners, you should let me, I'm a pro player, you should just let me help you sell games. Stick me in a computer near the front entrance to the mall, I'll move games for you. So the kids were very entrepreneurial at a young age. And so, we bought some tickets, we all went out to LA. They had introduced me to teamliquid.net at one point. I thought, why do they always pour over this forum? Like, what's going on in there? And I spent some time reading teamliquid.net, kind of, skulking in the background. I thought, wow, this is really smart. This is like a really smart forum. And you can see that the older, more educated, more seasoned members are kind of helping young kids like my kids behave, be more articulate. They're challenging them about the facts, about their strategic opinions. And I thought, well, this is really kind of cool that they're affiliated with this. And this was confirmed in LA when they went out and competed in LA. And older members walked up to me and said, well, you're practically the only parent here. We think this is super cool as a mom that you're allowing this for your kid. Gave me a lot of advice. Again, this is the StarCraft community, right? It's a smarter, more proactive, very special community. So anyway, that was kind of the start of it, that LA competition. And from there, they kind of organized themselves to really lock down and practice and drill. They were incredibly self-disciplined about it. We had we ended up with a lot of crazy household rules around when you could play StarCraft. They negotiated with me that if I said dinner's ready and they said we're in a game, I had to back off. And they explained to me why, because you can't control the length of the game. And I'm like, okay, try not to get into a game within 20 minutes of dinner. So we came up with these solutions. And I don't know, it was fun. My thing was, you do 2 hours of French, you get 40 minutes of StarCraft. You do 3 hours of chemistry, you get half an hour of StarCraft. So and the kids were very, very good. I was working all the time. I had these rules about how long they could be on the computer, and they were always super respectful. In fact, they said to me at dinner once when they were like 30, they were like, yeah, we don't know why we were so good about rules. They were like, nobody was watching us. We were so dumb. We should have just done whatever we wanted. Anyway, but they were great kids. They were great kids.
Yeah, it totally sounds like it. Sounds like such a unique family dynamic. So another sort of piece, this one about Nick, he talked about his decision to move to Korea rather, and how that was sort of a split-second decision, dropping out of school, kind of talking to you about it. How did that go down?
I had spent my youth traveling and having adventures overseas. And when I settled in Kansas City, largely to be near my parents so they could help me with the kids while I did these businesses, I was worried that they were going to get this provincial attitude that, Kansas City is actually a wonderful place to raise children. And my very close friends who live there, and I love living in Kansas City. But Kansas City is a little bit about Kansas City is the best place on earth. You should never want to be anywhere else, And when I left Kansas City as a young woman to go out and have adventures in the world, people were very suspicious of that. And I was worried that my children would be tainted by that. And I wanted them to be citizens of the world. So I distinctly remember a moment in which I was lecturing them about being, travel and going out, and I wanted them to study abroad. And one of them, I can't remember which one, said to me very reasonably, he said, but that's your thing. All we want to do is go to the mall and play games. And I remember thinking, oh my God, my children have become mall rats. It's the end of the world. And, hilariously, then, in college, they start getting these gigs. Nick kind of paved the way when he was eliminated by Sean at a competition. He talked his way up on stage casting, and that was the start of his career. And then almost immediately after that, the producer of that show said to him, I have a gig for you in Asia. I think it was Singapore. He said, can you go to Singapore? And I got a call from Nick at home. Nick's in college by now. And he said, okay, I don't want you to wig out, but I'm telling you that I was in Singapore last week. But I'm back and everything's fine. And I said, you were where? I'm like, do you even have a passport? Like, how did you do that? And he said, well, the community got together, got some money, told me where to go. I got a rush passport, got on a plane, left. I was back 4 days later. And I was actually thrilled. I was thrilled that my kids were going to have adventurous lives. And then when Nick called me after doing many gigs internationally, when Nick called me and said he was in the middle of his second semester, senior year at college. He was going to college on a debate scholarship. And he said to me, I've just been offered a TV show in Korea, but I'd have to drop out of college. What do you think? And I thought, oh, so close, so close. And I thought, well, how often do you get offered your own TV show in life? This is an education too. Life is not all about going to school and getting a degree. There's many paths through life that you can, you know, that can teach you a lot. So I said, go for it. So Nick went off to Korea, which was incredibly brave, I thought. I had spent some time in France as a young woman, but I knew the language, and even then it was pretty scary for me. But to go off to a country where I didn't know anybody with an exotic alphabet language, I thought that was pretty courageous. And he then started to carve out a career for himself, and it was hard work. It was very hard work. Sometimes I'm mildly annoyed by people who are like, "Oh, Sean and Nick, they were first to market and they just locked everything up and they were super lucky." And it's true, they were, but I think people don't understand how hard they worked, and how many years were really tough and how they hung in there. I remember a period in Korea where Nick was between paying gigs and he was debating whether he should come home or not. And he was literally couch surfing on other people's couches with all of his belongings in plastic bags, just trying to hang in there and make it. So they definitely paid their dues.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that when Nick first went out to Korea, it was a solo broadcast. So you have these 3-4 hour broadcasts where he's casting by himself. Like, that's insane. That's a lot of hours to just be the only on-screen talent. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of the nature of the early days of a fledgling business like this, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think when Dan came out, that was just pivotal. They are like brothers. They are truly family to each other. They're great friends. They're very loyal to each other. And I think, they spent a lot of time thinking about what does a good cast mean? Like, what does it mean? Scripting out things they thought were funny, trying to understand what the latest dynamics were so that they could remain fresh. I mean, they worked hard at that stuff. They worked very hard at that. I don't know. It's very cool. I was fascinated by the rise of tech, and I was fascinated that my kids were on the frontier of a new thing, and they were trying to make it work. They're trying to contribute to it. I thought that was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
What do you think led you to be so supportive of this sort of extreme pursuit of gaming at a time when it wasn't very socially acceptable?
I was a single mom who needed to make a living. And some guy in New York, who's a former boss of mine, literally gave me some money and said, "I believe in you. I think you can build a whole international business out of Kansas." And I thought he was insane. But I needed the job. So I took his money and started to work on this. And and it worked. I was just fascinated that you can build stuff out of nothing. So my whole thing was I wanted the kids to learn how to be entrepreneurial. And if they're, no matter what you do in life, it's incredibly hard work. If you choose, to work in a bank, it's going to be hard work at some level. You might as well work hard at something that you love. It just makes life more interesting. And you can get farther if you are a person who makes stuff happen. And I could see that the kids were already making stuff happen for themselves, using StarCraft as a platform, as a vehicle. So I was all for it. I certainly never thought they'd take it as far as it went. One of my big pieces of advice to them was I used to say, somebody is going to knock you, some glamorous 18-year-old is going to come knock you off your thrones, which eventually happened.
Of course.
But and you need to be prepared to move on to something else in life and keep adapting. But I've had many careers. I've been an academic. I had this whole career as a law expert. Now I'm in gaming. So I'm a believer that you can always reinvent yourself. You can always learn. I'm big on learning, and I think it keeps your life fresh and keeps your brain alive. And I think the skills you pick up by transitioning from career to career make you more valuable next time you arrive. So I was all for it. I thought it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. I think they were pretty lucky to have somebody really open-minded as their parent figure. Um, so have you ever had like a really hard time explaining the nature of your son's work to like friends, family, stuff like that? Maybe less so now, but earlier on, perhaps?
Earlier on, yeah, people just didn't get it. I mean, they just didn't get it. As you said, the school didn't get it. Um, I did go down and talk to the principal and go, look, this is my kid's thing, and they're very good at it and they work very hard at it. And the principal backed down. Um, but yeah, it is cutting edge. Even today, I will say this is of all the careers I've had, what we do here at Frost Giant, it's among the most challenging work I've ever done because games are at the bleeding edge of tech. Gaming communities are at the bleeding edge of all communities. There's just so many smart people in this space, and things keep shifting so quickly. Everything I knew when I left Blizzard in 2019, I feel now is obsolete because everything's moving again so fast. So just to keep up is something else. It's something else. And I think that's something that's very hard for people in my generation to understand the speed of adaptation and change that people in your generation need to keep up with in order to remain viable.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely a different I think professional dynamic now than it was for some previous generations.
Yeah.
So your company bio lists you as a co-founder of Day9 TV. What role did you play in Sean's business?
Oh, yeah. So I'm running this giant litigation business. We're in the middle of the Madoff litigations. Nick now has an established career in Korea, and Sean's in graduate school um, at USC. And he said to me, I'm I'm thinking of not competing anymore because graduate school is pretty challenging. I've made a series of podcasts for TeamLiquid.net on strategy, and I kind of enjoyed it. He's like, I'm thinking of transitioning to doing something more like what Nick does. Um, can can you talk to me about how to set up a business? So I actually came out for a 4-day weekend, and he and I walked and walked and walked and walked and talked and talked and talked, and he just asked me questions about how I started up businesses for my investor and what was involved and what the challenges were and how I thought about things. And it was very exciting for me, right? Because I've been doing this for 25 years, and here is my son. He's super smart and he's asking the right questions. Sean and I are very simpatico, so we can like talk to each other in a kind of fast shorthand. He got everything that I was saying. Um, and so I think it was either for Christmas or his birthday, I incorporated him um, as a Nevada corporation, Day9 TV, and it was him and his best friend from college and I. We set this thing up, and then for a long time, I just gave them advice over my lunch hour from the business I was running. But at some point, my father became very ill. We had great parents. Had a hilarious, interesting father and a darling mother who helped me raise Nick and Sean, and played a really important role in their lives. And they were in their late 90s, and they became ill. And I'm trying to work on the Madoff litigations, and it's all becoming too much. And Sean said to me, "You should just quit and come work with Eric and me full time at Day9 TV." He's like, "Games are fun. Like, look what a great time we're having over here." So I did it. I moved in with my parents to take care of them while they were ill and started working full time on Day 9 TV. And the first thing we decided we'd do is we would create a community launch for StarCraft 2 for Wings of Liberty. And it's so funny to look back and think now, I literally tried to call up Blizzard and go, this is your lucky day. We're going to put on a show for you. You know, Sean had said to me, by now Sean is live streaming. I had this vision for Sean that he could be the Tim Ferriss of gaming. I don't know if you remember who Tim Ferriss is. He's a guy who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. He had a blog. It had millions of followers. And I was fascinated by this generation of young men who ran these blogs, these financial blogs, these business blogs, and they had these big followings. And I kept saying to Sean, you need to write a blog. This is my business strategy, right? Blogs are the future. And Sean's like, I'm a mathematician. Why would I want to write? I don't want to do that. So Sean calls me back and goes, they've just invented something called live streaming. And it's perfect. All I have to do is roll out of bed, turn on the camera, and talk. Even if it's terrible, it's too late, can't edit it, it's live. I'm going to keep a daily diary. And he immediately started to do it. And almost immediately had a very large audience. I tried to call Blizzard and say, look, we've got this large audience. We're going to put on a community show for you. And never got a call back. Right, probably calling the wrong departments, don't know what I'm doing, used to cold calling people, used to business networking. And I finally said to Sean, all right, we're going to put this show on, but from a business point of view, I want you to know it's a terrible idea because we don't own this IP and we don't have a license. But family project, let's try it anyway. And eventually Blizzard actually did lend us some talent, sent out the voice talent to visit us, which we appreciated. But it was a huge hit. We borrowed Sean's college campus because they had a broadcast set up for free in exchange for some mild promotion of the college. And we asked every StarCraft community in the world to make content. And they all did. And it was amazing content. And we decided to have a 12-hour countdown to the launch of Wings of Liberty. And so the day of, and Sean's got amazing stories about this on Day 9 TV, but the day of, we go out to this campus, and to my amazement, people have flown in from all over the world for this thing, from the StarCraft community. That's this community. This community is extraordinary. And this great guy, Tom Garcia, who now is actively working in the industry full time, came up to me and said, do you need help? You look a little overwhelmed. Do you need help putting stuff on? I put on events all the time. I'm gonna hang some things for you. Organize the crowd of people who were waiting to help me pull up, backdrops on the venue, adjust lighting, set up tables. And it was a 3-ring circus. We were serving pizza, selling StarCraft with GameStop. We had a board game area and a console game area. But it was a very ambitious thing. And these community guys totally helped me pull it off. Set up a ticket booth, just took over, just literally took over. We didn't sleep for 48 hours. We were delusional by the end, but it was super fun. And it kind of put us on the map.
That sounds awesome.
And it was amazing. And we rinsed and repeated that again and again and again. We eventually got a contract with Red Bull to put on their esports events. And I would, go out with Sean to a strange town, and we would call up the local StarCraft community and go, can you help? We need help. People would drop work. I remember once up in Seattle, none of the computers arrived, and a whole bunch of attorneys left their law firm, StarCraft fans, rented a van on their own, went out to Costco and bought like a bunch of computers so they could set up a computer network for me in the middle of the workday. So
that's wild.
That's the StarCraft community.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I hear a lot of amazing stories. Not quite that amazing. That's pretty insane. But yeah, no, it's definitely a tight knit community. So you mentioned earlier about your time with Blizzard Esports. So that was a more behind the scenes role. What did you really do for them?
Um, you know, Sean, at Day 9 TV, so Sean and Eric and I bid on an RFP for Heart of the Swarm to, they were doing a big launch for Heart of the Swarm. And so we said, why don't we do what we did for Wings of Liberty? Only let's do it with you. We'll come out to your campus. Let's invite 100 community leaders and let's do another countdown show. And they were like, great. So I moved to Blizzard for 2 months to produce this thing and to work with people at Blizzard. And what was so funny, I understood so little about game publishing and game development. At the time when we were doing the Wings of Liberty community show, I was like, Sean, I don't understand why Blizzard doesn't want to collaborate with us. Like, isn't it like publishing a book? Once a book is done, like it's a pure marketing ploy. They should want to work with us. We're selling their game for them. Then I sit in-house for 2 months at Blizzard to produce this community event for Heart of the Swarm. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe how complicated it is to not only develop a AAA game, but to keep it standing, to keep it functional and keep all its parts and gears lubricated and moving and have no downtime. I was stunned by the complexity of what was going on behind the scenes at Blizzard. It was a real eye-opener for me. But it was super fun, right? They gave me an office of my own, and it said Day 9 and Tasteless's mom on a card on the door. And I was allowed to wander around the whole company asking questions, and the nature of what we were putting on required me to talk to different departments. I was just fascinated. I'm working insane hours to try to pull it together really fast, but at night I would wander in between the desks of the devs for StarCraft. And because they were all themed, right? This is a super creative crowd. So people have like their desks looks like a tiki bar. It looks like a dungeon with a real gate that opens. I mean, people did insane things to their cubicles. And I just thought it was stunningly creative. So I would wander around the cubicles at night looking at all this stuff going, this is the coolest thing. Looking at people's artwork, people have artwork pinned up to bulletin boards, dragons and goblins and demons. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So we did the Heart of the Swarm launch. The Morheims were very good to us. By now, the Morheims have reached out to us from nowhere and said, who are you people? And taken us to dinner. And they were just lovely and encouraging and deeply interested in the community. Mike loves StarCraft, but he also just loves the StarCraft community. One of the things I did when I was at Blizzard, it was super fun, is Amy said to me, okay, for Mike's 50th birthday, we're going to put on a birthday party, and all it's going to be is the StarCraft community, because they're his favorite people. And so she and I worked on taking over a venue and it was around the time of BlizzCon, and all the pros were there, all the casters were there. And we all sat up all night having a party and playing poker and board games and console games. It was amazing. It was amazing. But that's the Morheims for you. So I'm rambling. What were we talking about?
I mean, that sounds unreal. But yeah, we were basically just talking about your time with Blizzard and sort of what that looked like.
Oh, yeah. So they offered me a job at the end of that. And by now, Eric and Sean, Sean's been picked up as one of the first channels on Twitch, which was a brand new venture back then. So he's got Emmett Shear and Kevin Lynn as mentors. He had a whole series of really smart people in the industry who were mentoring him. I was doing more executional stuff for him. He and Eric were planning strategy, and I'm in the back end trying to produce stuff as fast as I can. So I moved on to the biz dev team on Team One. which was StarCraft and Heroes of the Storm, right around the time Tim joined. So he and I kind of arrived at Blizzard at the same time and became friends, and worked on that for a while. Super challenging for me because, even though I love games, I was not deeply immersed in this community. So Matt Weber, Heyoka, who was with Team Liquid at the time and who I'd worked with on a lot of stuff for Day 9 TV and a lot of other people in the community, created a Skype thread for me so that I could sit at my desk at Blizzard at my new job and ask them questions and not get into trouble. So I would go, I've just been in this meeting and they hate my idea. Why? And Matt would go, here's a thread, here's a thread, here's a thread. This is the context you need to understand. So they were great. But I loved Team One. I loved the StarCraft team. I loved Chris Siggety, who at the time was running it. Was a guy with soul and passion who deeply cared about the community. And from Chris and Amy, I really learned more about how devs can work with the community. They really taught me a lot. I learned a lot from Sean, but I learned even more from them. And then Amy moved over to esports to create a new esports department, and I followed her over there on the biz dev team. And that became this huge, complex department with 1 million people that I just loved. They were like family. I miss them to this day. I think they're the best people I have ever worked with in my whole life. I want them all back. I got some of them here, but I miss the larger crew. And we all worked really hard on esports, trying to figure out business models and how to make things work and how to stand up all these esports in all these regions all over the world. And eventually my job became sitting in a closet, scrutinizing deals and contracts nonstop, and working on policy matters for Blizzard.
Well, that gave us a pretty good idea of what your time with Blizzard looked like. So now transitioning over to Frost Giant finally, what led to that? How'd you end up here?
As I said, I had always had huge admiration for Tim and what he was doing with the StarCraft team. Tim is just fun. He's got a very wry sense of humor, which I appreciate. And he's very calm and he's very organized and he's very transparent with both his staff and with the community. I thought he was doing an amazing job of working on StarCraft. And of course, all of us have grown up with StarCraft, right? We're all sort of OG grassroots people. So here's Tim carrying the torch forward. So when I had an opportunity to work here, literally Tim was, had left Blizzard and was recruiting all of my favorite people from the StarCraft team. And I I would have begged to have had this job and to work with him on this. For me, it's coming full circle, right? It's a startup. My whole background for 20 years was doing startups. It's a Blizzard style RTS game, which is my kids' game that I watch them grow up on. I understand what StarCraft means to the early community. This whole crew here, this is a big passion project. All the people you see behind me here could have had cushy careers and just sat at Blizzard, but they left to take this big gamble to really make this dream come true. So we're heads down, we're working super hard, we're hoping that everything goes well and that we make a game that carries the StarCraft tradition forward, that we make a Blizzard style RTS game that is the next frontier, and that we build around it a whole open ecosystem and give a home to that community that has carried us for 20 years. We'll see. We're going to need the community's help to get there.
I think a lot of us are on board. But so as the business manager for Frost Giant, what sort of metrics do you plan on sort of engaging with, or observing to measure success when it comes to Stormgate?
That's going to be a moving target. We have an outsized ambition for this game, right? We came in, we wanted to have everything and more. Literally, we were trying to build a $100 million game, AAA game, with 35 million. So right now, the focus is efficiency. What do we need to prioritize? What features can we ship now? It's so complex to stitch these games together. Everybody is working in silos on a piece of the bigger vision, right? To stitch all that together is surprisingly difficult. I sometimes describe it as, we're all in a potato sack race and with our ankles tied together, and we're staggering forward as a line. But as we're staggering forward, some of us are surging ahead and some of us are tripping each other and we're falling down. It's very difficult to stay on top of the efficiencies, but it's very important we do that in order to hit certain roadmap deadlines and to monitor our spending. We're out fundraising right now. It's not a great climate to be looking for money. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen for that. I think at some point we are going to go live with the game into early access, and the game is going to be where the game is at that moment, because we're going to need to start to monetize the game in order to continue to build. People fret about that a lot internally. They really care here. They want it to be great. But a lot of this stuff just takes time and money to build. So we're hoping that we go live with the game and that the community then pitches in and keeps us honest, keeps us focused on what needs to be perfected and built next. And that over the next couple of years following that we really build up a rich ecosystem, a rich game, and that we all get it there. That's the hope, at least. So in that second half, once I've stopped focusing on efficiencies and pennies, which kind of feels like my job right now, is can I get it cheaper? Can I barter for it? What can I do? Can a community member bail me out? Later on, it will be trying to figure out business models, business partnerships. How do we help each other? How do we make this thing work?
So you are currently sort of considering or seeking additional rounds of funding?
Yes. Yeah, we are. It's just expensive to build games. It's expensive to take games to market. It's interesting. It's we now miss some of our old departments from Blizzard that maybe we took for granted. If you needed a website or landing pages, you called up Web and Mobile and just said, build it, and it was built, and it was perfect because they had the best web designers in the world in that department. If I needed keys for beta, I would call up BattleNet and they would deliver keys with instructions and cautions and keep an eye on key reselling for me. I mean, everything was done to an extraordinarily expert level. You need a direct marketing campaign before launch. There was a direct marketing group that designed those things and monitored, how well they were performing. Everything here is homegrown.
Yeah.
Everything we are doing. Everybody is wearing 14 hats and trying to bootstrap everything. Now that's the joy. That's the joy of a startup. But sometimes it's exhausting and it's hard. And because we probably won't have money to do an enormous Blizzard style launch with $100 million in spend. We're relying very much on the fans to help us take the game to market and spread the word and tell their friends, look, there's co-op, there's modes you can play. It's going to have super high level play, but it's going to be super fun too, and it's super social, and the community is amazing because the community is amazing, right?
Most definitely.
Um,
So
that's the hope.
yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Like, and I think a lot of the community and fans would rather see time and money go into the actual game as opposed to marketing spend.
Every dime is going into the game. Every dime is going into the game. But that's hard because you do need to get the word out, and good marketing does involve lots of cash, especially as you approach launch. So, we're going to need to get very creative about getting the word out.
What do you think are the strongest elements of Frost Giant, just like as a business?
The staff, the staff. This is James, one of the early Blizzard employees. He's responsible for that super responsive feel for the RTS games for Blizzard. We're so lucky to have him here. He's our chief architect. He has now built a whole layer of tech on top of Unreal, which is the engine we're using for this game. Couldn't take the StarCraft engine with us, of course, so we had to start over from scratch. Spent the whole first year and a half just building the engine that the game would sit on top of.
Yeah.
That's his work, and the current game is many multiples more responsive now than StarCraft was. So we're super grateful to have him. These guys, also engineers, young, passionate, incredible art team, people, ton of people here from the community. Like, I don't know if you saw Heyoka walked by in the background a while ago. We have Matt, we have Kevin Dong, both of them used to run teamliquid.net. Kind of bring extraordinary understanding of the community, its history of the game. I'm from the community side. Ryan Shooter, it's kind of cool. Ryan Shooter made the Game Hard overlay and sort of became well known in the community for having done that. And when I was brought into Blizzard, the first thing the Morheims had me do was hire Ryan in-house on the StarCraft team. So he and I also started at Blizzard at the same time. We were working on the arcade. We were trying to work on modding documentation together. We both had a lot of passion around that. So it's super exciting for me to have him here with me and to know that he and I are going to be working on the whole modding scene again in the future. We had so many big ambitions for that we hope we can take to fruition this time with this game. So just an extraordinary group that has a lot of depth of experience.
That's awesome.
And they're just funny and fun to work with too.
Wow, for sure. It definitely seems like it. I got extremely positive impressions from everyone I interacted with when I visited you guys. So, yeah, I think that the team certainly seems like one of the strong points of the organization. I think that's why also like the community was so quick to support this otherwise new and unknown company. Right? Was there were so many of those faces that were so well known and liked and respected. So it makes sense.
Yeah, we had worked with a lot of them for many years at Blizzard, and then before that at Day 9 TV. So we had a lot of long-term relationships. And I think many of us sort of see the future the same way. So it's sort of exciting to be able to collaborate again,
Yeah,
the
no,
same way.
I can imagine. So you've been really like heavily involved with the RTS community for like decades now. Have you spent any time like playing any of these games, or not so much?
Oh, every year at Blizzard, in my performance review, Amy Morheim would say to me, "Where are you with StarCraft? You need to get beyond the campaigns, Cara. You need to get on the ladder. You need to get on the ladder. I'm judging you because you're not on the ladder." And now I have Tim saying the same thing to me. Yes, I played our game. I dabbled in StarCraft, not in a very sophisticated way. I always am so distracted. My job is a little crazy here. It's my job is pieced together from many different roles. So I'm always running from one thing to another, trying to keep things glued together. So I keep thinking I need to take a 2-week vacation and just really, really bone up on my skills. I have people who have volunteered to coach me. So,
Do you have any favorite pro gamers, old school or current, that you sort of watched some of their matches over the years?
oh gosh, I have a weakness for the very, very early Brewer players who my kids idolized, who went to Korea. But then more recently, I'm so touched and charmed by Oliveira and what he did. I mean, that was just so cool. I happened to be talking to SC Boy on Discord right around that time. So we were all losing our minds together over Discord. And it was just so cool to me that this kid is having a moment at this major tournament, and I'm on Discord with the SC Boy staff, and they're having a moment. I don't know. It's just very, very cool.
Oh, that was definitely magical. And I think a great choice. But yeah, I think that about does it for us. So, thank you so much for taking the time. Any
Thank
closing words?
you. Um, just just to thank the entire community. First of all, thank you for making these videos. I will tell you, for years I used to say to Sean, we need to do like some kind of roundtable where people just tell stories about the early days of esports and streaming, because all this stuff is going to be lost, and you guys have such great anecdotes. We actually used to have a tradition post BlizzCon where we would all sit at a round table for brunch. Everybody who had come to BlizzCon, all the old casters, DJ Wheat, Sir Scoots would be there. I mean, early guys were mentors to my kids. And they would just tell war stories. And they were hilarious. They were so interesting. And I would always think, oh, I wish I had a camera. Like, somebody needs to write this down. Somebody needs to record this. And now you are. So thank you. I think these are going to be like really valuable um, videos in the future for documenting, a really interesting time in the history of the community. But
Thank you.
other than that, I just want to say thank you to you and the rest of the community. Everyone has been so good to us and so helpful and so patient. We ask you to keep us honest, keep that feedback coming, keep talking to us. And I want to promise everybody we're working to bring you the best game we can. So
I think we're all looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like and comment down below, and consider sharing it. If you want to see more like this, be sure to get subscribed.